Welcome to the Humanergy Leadership Podcast, where we tackle your toughest leadership challenges and share practical tools to help you lead with impact. This is one of our first Friday sessions. It's actually the last in this series for the spring of 2025. And my colleague Jim Marshall is going to be sharing some more tools to help not just you lighten your load when things are feeling like they're overwhelming, but also how you can help your people lighten theirs. So as a leader, what can you do to support your team as they come to you saying they're mildly overwhelmed or incredibly overwhelmed? As I said, this is the last of the series. You can go back and see these either on our YouTube site or in the podcast and refer back to the first Friday sessions that have all been based around this idea of how do we lighten our backpack, the things we carry around with us all the time. But for now, here's Jim Marshall.
Greetings, everybody. I am so looking forward to the conversation today and trying to offer you something of value to take away when you're thinking about helping your people or the people that you work with their backpacks or their workload. This is the last in a series of 6 exploring this backpack idea, which we sometimes talk about it as a bucket. We sometimes talk about it as a backpack. We sometimes talk about it in terms of workload, but it's this pervasive idea that we're trying to do more with less these days. And I think we've been trying to do that for a couple of decades, and it's progressively getting more. We try to go faster. We try to do it with less people. We try to find ways to streamline and to automate, and it creates a sense of pressure. I think I hear it, we heard some of what you said, and that was so helpful. It sounds like I have more to do than time to do it. I think burnout is one of those key trigger, red flag words. If somebody says burnout, then we know like, oh, they're at a high level. But so what it sounds like and what it looks like and what it feels like is it's pretty severe. It's pretty extreme. It's pretty emotional sometimes. Not always. I suppose there's times when someone steps into the conversation and they're pretty calibrated, they're pretty grounded, they're pretty reasonable. But I think one thing I would offer when you look at this dangers of under and over capacity, and I will mention this is a freebie on the Humanergy website under the resources section. So I'm showing you about half the chart here, which if you're listening along, it's in the middle on a continuum of under capacity to over capacity is the green zone, the peak performance zone, where the symptoms are energized and focused. And then you've going up towards overcapacity, the yellow zone and the red zone of unsustainable or failure zone, marked by things like exhaustion and fatigue in the yellow zone, and then burnout, breakdown, anxiety, anger. So what it can sound like can be pretty dramatic. And one of the reasons I wanted to start with what it sounds like is because I want to offer us a chance to reflect as leaders on how we respond in that moment. And we're going to respond as leaders, and our people are going to respond. I really appreciate you sharing your example, Terry, where someone didn't say something until probably it was too late as they progressed along, and then they felt they had to go to HR. And for most of us as leaders, we don't want our people to feel like they can't come to us and they can't talk to us about that situation. But one of the dynamics at play, I think, will be helped if we look at this quote from Daniel Kahneman from his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. A remarkable aspect of your mental life is that you are rarely stumped. The normal state of your mind is that you have intuitive feelings and opinions about almost everything that comes your way. You like or dislike people long before you know much about them. You trust or distrust strangers without knowing why. And I think he might say you make a judgment or a conclusion about what's really going on in a overloaded or overcapacity situation without a whole lot of conscious thought. And you think about the factors at play. You have a gut feel about their performance. Are they a top performer or a low performer? You have a gut feel about the quality of the relationship or the connection. Maybe you really are, friends with this person, you get along well, and maybe that predisposes you to openness to their thing. Maybe they're quite different than you are, even if you work well together, and that predisposes you towards a little bit more closed-minded. what I found in my time in the world of work and in dealing with my own capacity is that we sometimes think, is it a capacity problem, meaning that the person has too much on their plate or is overloaded, or is it a capability problem? They need to grow. It's a them thing. They need to grow. They need to develop. And over the years, one of the things that I'll share that I think was helpful to learn is that capacity problems sometimes masquerade as capability problems, meaning we attribute the heart of the issue to capability when really there's a capacity issue. There's more on their plate than what any average or reasonable person might be able to handle. So, I'll come back to dangers of over and under capacity. Quake, link that resource there. You can look at the leadership actions and the individual actions, and we're going to go on to explore that. What I want to offer and what I have done as a leader is to ask myself the question, what do I really want to achieve and what is really going on? Or what is at the heart? What's the root cause of what's creating this sense of burden and overload and more to do than time to do it? And with that Kahneman quote in the back of our minds, what's really going on? It's like, what I want to do is I want to question my conclusions. Or I had a leader say to me, I hold my conclusions loosely and I'm looking around. And the process of exploring what's going on is something I do in partnership with that person, but I'm on investigation for what's really going on and what's going to create some relief. I did a quick Google search around what happens when people feel overloaded or burned out. And so while you as a leader are thinking, what do I really want to achieve and what's really going on, you know that circumstantially what that person's experiencing is a decline in performance. And I thought it was insightful, even what it said is, even if that decline in performance is the person gets laser focused on tasks, stops being proactive, stops being creative. But I think the longer that it progresses, the more it's less about, I'm not just not creative, I'm not productive, I'm not effective, I'm not making good decisions, because emotion starts to cloud how we're doing that work. If the situation continues, then turnover is likely. Think about that person spending time brushing up their resume, looking for other jobs, interviewing for other jobs, and eventually choosing to leave. Think about how it affects teamwork in the terms of conflict or reduced collaboration or the kind of coping behaviors. Healthy ones like asking for help, or unhealthy ones like, I don't know, the time I doom scroll on my phone or I play games on my phone instead of doing the work that is ahead of me. So this is what's going on for our person while we're thinking about what do we do. Now, one of the things I'll say is what I do to manage my own backpack is exactly the same as what levers and opportunities I have to help somebody else. And what's helped me over the years is to think of it in terms of 4 levers. I'm going to work to prioritize what's important. I'm going to work to delegate what can be delegated to others or what is better delegated to others. I'm going to think about working smarter and potentially harder, and we'll get into that. And I'm going to need to think about delaying or stopping and renegotiating. Now, I'll say at the end, there's no cookie cutter solution. There's no simple solution to this work that we do. But the solution, the relief is going to come through conversation or a series of conversations exploring, prioritizing, delegating, looking at can we work smarter and harder, delaying, stopping, and renegotiating. So this is a bit of a review. One of the things I want to say about prioritizing as you start thinking about doing more with less is we need to let some things spill over. And this is referencing that bucket analogy. Some things are going to spill over. Be wise about what's going to spill over and what won't spill over. What's going to get done, what's not going to get done. Because, and this is again a review of a slide shared in the last couple of months, we need ruthless prioritization. Every time I say yes to one thing, I'm saying no to something else. And the opportunity, every no that I choose to say can be a yes to something better. And I don't know about you, but I would experience this even in the course of a day. I didn't have a plan for the day. I showed up, I went in from meeting to a half an hour of downtime, and I looked at my inbox. I responded to email, then meeting, then inbox, then meeting, then inbox. And I get to the end of that day and I feel unproductive. I feel like I haven't been useful. I haven't been effective in that day. And what I realize is the brutal reality or the brutal master was my calendar and my inbox instead of me. And so when it comes to prioritization, I think what we're inviting our people into and what we're trying to do with them and assist them in is deciding what is it that you want to consciously, intentionally choose to get done right now? Because something's going to get done. But if we just let things ride, it's probably not the best things or the most important things. Thought it was important to remind us sometimes as we do this conversation, we're asking our people to think about, write down everything that's important that you're doing, right? Look at your calendar, look at your inbox. What's been occupying your time? And then we go through a process of categorization. Now, you might use this Eisenhower matrix, which is the 4 quadrants around are something urgent and important or not urgent and important. Those are the really important quadrants we want to pay attention to. Then the not important and urgent and the not important, not urgent. Those are also quadrants we want to pay attention to, but we're probably looking to offload those or stop doing those things. I only mention this just to say that's part of that work we do in investigation and exploration. What's important? What are you already working on? And what category do we want to put that into? So we come back to the 4 levers. We're having the conversation about prioritization. And after we've identified what's important for this person to be doing, then we want to talk delegation. They've already asked you for help, presumably, but can we ask others for help? A different function, some peers, whatever it looks like. Can we delegate to others? Can we coach others? I want to say a word of caution here. What I've experienced, if I say to someone, we'll just delegate and coach somebody else to doing that task, I haven't necessarily given them a lot of relief. I might give them a light at the end of the tunnel, but one of the things that stops us from delegating to others is that it takes time. And it takes time to get them up to speed. And so you want to be thinking about that as, even if that's the right solution, and that's part of what brings relief, that what's the lag time between when we decide to delegate some stuff and when the real true relief comes. And then I thought it was important to mention monkey management. We've been having fun with our clients talking about monkeys on backs. Monkeys are tasks or goals or projects. And there are certain monkeys that belong on my back and certain monkeys that belong on the backs of those who report to me or on the backs of somebody else. As leaders, I think it's our job to think about, where does the monkey belong? Because as an individual contributor, it's often the case that I want to be a team player. So if somebody asks me for help, I think I should say yes. And as leaders, we need to be the ones to start the conversation about, where does this monkey belong? Which role in the organization, who's back, and then that's a capacity conversation, right? Do we have enough people there to handle the monkeys and that kind of thing? So, but that systemic monkey management conversation, that's on us to start, especially if our person has come to us looking for help. Then the 3rd lever, working smarter and harder, some ideas that we've shared over the last couple of months. We want to increase efficiencies where possible. Is there a way to do this faster? Is there a way to automate it? Is there a way that IT might help us to write a program to generate a report? Is there a way that we can use AI? We explored that with John a couple of months ago. Then thinking about this person working smarter, can we secure some training for them? Are there ways that we can grow and develop them as a person so that some relief comes, so they get better, they feel more effective, they get faster at doing that? And that might mean send them outside the organization. That might mean look at a peer and ask that peer to mentor them. And then there's a question around adding resources, time, money, people, that kind of thing. At times, we might need to work longer hours. I think if the answer that we're coming up with is working longer hours, then we want to think about light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that came out in some of your responses. People acknowledge that they're really burdened because of what's coming for the next couple of months, but there's already a light at the end of the tunnel. And then as leaders, I thought it was important we mentioned this is the time that we want to increase our check-ins, whatever our normal one-on-ones are with that person. If we're not having any, then I feel like you all were the advocates saying at the outset of this conversation, we got to think about scheduling the proper cadence of one-on-ones with our people. And in this case, if they come to me, then I want to think, do I want to check in more often? Do I want to move from monthly to weekly? And what kind of coaching conversations? What are you learning in the time you're spending with your peer who's a little faster and a little more efficient at this? How are you feeling about the work that you're getting done? Are you starting to see some relief? These are the kinds of check-in, learning, coaching conversations that we want to have. And then the last, delaying, stopping, renegotiating. I'll just say to you, in my experience, we pay homage to this. We talk about it, but we don't really do it. It's pretty difficult. It's rarely done. We don't want to forget to renegotiate. In other words, we don't want to make this decision in a vacuum. You and me, direct report and leader, we decide not to stop doing that or to shelve that project until next year, but we don't tell the other stakeholders in the organization. That's probably going to come around and bite us in the rear later and look like poor performance or just look like misunderstanding or drama or noise in the organization. So it's important to think about, if we are talking delay or stop, then who are the stakeholders and how do we renegotiate? And that last idea, the inverse relationship, it's like the more we take on, the less we get done, which is just my way of saying it's important to do 1 and 4. I got to get clear on what's important, because if I have clarity about that, then that's the less I want to get done and the less I want to make sure it gets completed. But if I just let it be more, the more that's on my plate, inversely, I'm going to get less done. So as I said, it's not simple. There's never really a cookie cutter, easy answer. But the work that I've experienced in coaching others, that I've experienced in leading myself, and the work in leading organizations is it's going to fall in one of these 4 levers is where relief is going to come from, and moving someone from being overloaded down back into a space of peak performance.
That was the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe and visit humanergy.com for many more resources.